So good afternoon, everybody. So it's great to be here today, and thank you, John, for the introduction. So before Patsy and I get into Q&A, I wanted to share some perspective on why diversity and inclusion is important at Macy's and how we manage our programs. First off, I'd like just to shout out to the Macy's team that is here, so raise your hand, everybody. So there's our mighty team there, 2 tables worth. So at Macy's, we like to call ourselves America's department store. So we operate in 44 of the top 50 markets, or the top 50 states. I guess we only have 50 states. But that also includes Puerto Rico and Guam as part of our place. These stores combined with e-commerce basically touch about 1 out of 2 Americans every single year. So our national scope and scale is one of our biggest strengths. And it also means, as John said, that we serve a very diverse mix of customers and communities. And we know that our business is always strongest when our brand is at its best, when all aspects of the community are reflected in the rich diversity of our colleague population and in all of our strategies that serve them. At Macy's, diversity and inclusion is ingrained in our business strategy, and it's also as part of our path to growth. We intentionally manage our programs to ensure that diversity and inclusion is integrated into every aspect of the company. And we've organized our D&I work into 5 focus areas. So John referred earlier to our stakeholders meeting in which we reviewed all of these. We hold ourselves accountable in these 5 categories with the right KPIs. So these 5 focus areas are, first up is workforce, and that our goal is to build a diverse and inclusive workplace. And we do a good job on gender diversity. Our frontline colleagues all the way up through our management team, through our board of directors, over 50% of all of those populations are female. And that includes, as mentioned, our board of directors. But then our biggest opportunity is really improving the ethnic diversity through those middle to upper management ranks, and that's our biggest opportunity in this bucket for 2019 and beyond. Our second focus is on merchandising and supplier diversity. On the merchandising side, this has been a good challenge for us. We have a good track record of bringing minority and women-owned businesses into Macy's. But with the nature of retail, as they grow, they become very attractive targets for acquisition by our larger brand partners. So we always have to have a robust pipeline of emerging vendor partners, and we're very focused on that. Our third area is on marketing, and everything that we are doing to ensure the diversity of our customers that are reflected in our marketing content, as well as the people that run our marketing areas. And this is an area we've made some really good progress over the past couple of years, and you see that in all of our materials and what we're doing with our narratives and marketing. The fourth area is around community partnerships. And as John mentioned, our community stakeholder meetings, we're very connected with all of our external stakeholders here in New York City, certainly in our Cincinnati, Atlanta, San Francisco. Those are our big population centers, but then all the communities that we also serve through our stores, call centers, logistics centers. We're very committed to keeping an open dialogue going forward there. And our fifth area, our last area is on customer experience and the work we do to ensure that every customer has a great experience in our stores. We're committed that we are going to treat every single of our customers with respect. We have a formalized customer bill of rights, and every customer should have a warm and welcoming experience in our stores. And because of the number of customers that we serve, there are going to be problems, and when they do occur, we have a process to deal with it very quickly and respectfully. So when I step back and I look objectively at where Macy's is today, I think we're doing a good job in some of these areas, but we've got an opportunity to do better in all of these areas. And we're committed to that work. We just recently announced that Sean Outler, raise your hand, Sean, is our new Chief of Diversity and Inclusion for Macy's, Inc. And I've been a big fan of Sean for many, many years. She worked in merchandising, came up through the merchandising pyramids, as well as many operational roles for us. And as everybody in our company knows, she is a woman of action and is able to take strategies, get the full influence of all of the senior stakeholders around her, and really accomplish everything we need to get accomplished. She's also the architect of workshop at Macy's, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. But this is a program that we're particularly proud of. It was all about training and mentorship for minority and women-owned businesses, and Sean was the architect of that. So to kind of sum up before I join Patsy is really what we're doing with the diversity and inclusion. It's ingrained in our growth strategy. It's definitely embedded in everything that we talk about in terms of how we're going to be a better company. We do that through clear and measurable goals And we have a commitment from the top all the way through the entire colleague population. So with that, I think we're going to turn it over to Patsy for questions, and then I think we're going to have time for questions for many of you at the end of this.
Is that working? Yes. There we go. Excellent. Well, first of all, thank you so much, John and Maria, for having me back again this year. I'm always pleased and delighted to be part of this conference. I mean, one of the things I think is particularly great about this conference is that you do walk away with actions to take and ideas you can actually move forward in your organization. So I hope everybody has a great experience, as is typical here in this event. And I'm also delighted to be here with Jeff, so thank you so much.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Absolutely. And it sounds like Macy's is doing some phenomenal work in diversity and inclusion, which, of course, I'm very passionate about as well. So I have a couple of questions for you. The first is, clearly right now, in the environment that we sit in globally, geopolitically, rising voices, whether it's the Me Too movement, Black Lives Matter, all of these things are coming to the surface. Companies have a much bigger role to play, right? When they think about talent and to your point earlier, customers and even investors, right? So when you think about your diversity strategy, what are some of the key components, success factors, I would say, that actually make it work? Or how is it working so well?
So I think we're a work in progress. So I think as much progress as we've made, we see as much opportunity ahead of us. And I think the big thing is making sure that all of the strategies are connected with that we're really clear on the values and behaviors, and that we've got the talent base that is going to be steering the strategies in the way that we need to go. When I look at our customers that we serve more minority populations than we do the majority of Caucasian customers. And when you look into many, many parts of the United States, we were missing their needs just based on not having the right lenses on how to steer content, values, services. And so by really making a real effort to basically get all of our colleagues imbued with the right information and them coming from those communities has really helped in a lot of those, in developing those strategies. So we made good progress on that. And so when I look at our colleague population, it's about the same percentage of the communities that we serve when you look at the mix. When you get into the kind of the beginning management ranks, we're definitely there. When you get into the mid-management ranks, we're still good. When you get into the upper management ranks, we have a real fall off in particularly ethnic talent. And when you get into kind of the C-suite, we're much better because we've recruited key players and we're really good on the board of directors. So it's kind of that senior management level that we're really focused on right now. And why are they leaving the company? What do we need to do in training? What sort of environment we need to create? Not one where it's checking the box of diverse statistics, but what sort of inclusive environment are we creating so that those executives have a community and they are very viable candidates when we have jobs that are available for them.
No, that makes a ton of sense. And I'm curious, what are you doing to achieve that objective? Can you talk a little bit more about some of the programs you have in place or you're looking to put in place?
So one thing that was talked about earlier was employee resource groups. So I think it's really important that every one of your senior leaders have these as goals. And it's not an option. And in some cases, they have to be led there or they can't be part of the team. So when you look at the senior leaders at Macy's, we talk about this all the time, and we're getting much better at demonstrating not only in the talk, but also in how we're doing the walk. So making sure that you've always got diverse candidates for any job that is available. And if you don't have those, then you go outside the company. And if you don't have them inside the company, what are you doing within your own organization to develop them? So that's kind of from the tops down. The bottoms up has been equally important. So for the Macy's team that are here in the room, many of them are part of our employee resource groups. And that has been a real secret sauce for us. So we've got these communities that cut across our colleagues in all of our population centers. And we've got about 110 ERGs that are just completely switched on and empowered to kind of run not only the culture of what we're doing within their affinity groups, but also for them to advise and have a huge impact on the business strategy of the company. So if that's, if that's what we're doing with our Asian American community, or if it is the Latina community, or if we have it for African American, or if it's Pride, or we have a women, at Macy's, the WAM group, We have a Go Green group, all of them. So the Go Green group is really highly influential with us on what we're doing with our ESG standards. When you have what WHAM is doing with us, they do have a lot of influence with us in what we're doing with Me Too, and what we're doing with changing rooms, and what we're doing for nursing stations, and how you go in and out of maternity. Those ERGs have been very influential in the business strategies that we are deploying, and we've given them a voice, and they're taking it.
That's fantastic. I mean, I found in my own experience that if leveraging the ERGs or the BRGs can be really powerful, right? I mean, linking it back to the business strategy and giving them that responsibility, right, to help drive it forward is really great. So that's great to hear. So you mentioned also in your comments the workshop, and I'm keen to learn a little bit more about that program. It sounds really interesting.
Yeah, I'd give Sean Outler a lot of credit for this, because the workshop for us was, if you're going to stand for assortments that serve this customer, and James is a real hero of mine, and when you think about what he's doing at Ashley Stewart, you had a customer that was so passionate about what her needs were, and she wanted to join a community, and what she needed was content that really served her needs, the right styling, the right sizing, the right color and print, the right value. No one knows that better than those customers or those businesses that are of those communities. So we had a real dearth of women and minority-owned businesses that were servicing our customer profile. And so we just had a lot of misses in terms of assortment that weren't serving these customers. And so we made a real effort to, okay, let's get more companies that are owned by minorities or owned by women into the Macy's fold. And there was no pipeline for them. They didn't really exist. And so to expect that they were going to come along just by calling it out, we saw a responsibility as a company of our size to have a forum by which we could help them, nurture them. And so we started a thing called Workshop, and that basically is a week period of time where we give them massive training. We do it in collaboration with Babson College. Sean started this back in 2011, and these women and minority-owned businesses that didn't know necessarily how to do their cash flow, or they didn't know how am I going to nail down, what I'm going to do with investors, or what I'm going to do with what's the right marketing strategy, how much of my business should be online, things like UPC capability, just operationally financial, what they do with marketing, how they identify who their customers are, because they had the know-how on so many subjects that we wanted to tap into. And so that training, fits and starts. We started it in 2011. We've done it every year. We've graduated about 111 companies. Of those, every one of them are more financially secure. Most of them are in business now, and many of them are thriving. All of them generally have websites, and many of them are now doing business with Macy's and Bloomingdale's, and a lot of companies that are a lot smaller than ours. So I give Sean a lot of credit for being the architect of that, and there's still not enough women and minority-owned businesses that really understand these customers as well as they do for us, because we could take full advantage of their goods and services if there were more of them. So we see a big responsibility there, and that's what Workshop is about.
That's fantastic. Congratulations, by the way, Sean, getting that off the ground, and to you as well. That's incredible. Other organizations should absolutely consider the same concept, I would think.
Yeah, one of the things we do on that is making sure that these businesses are exposed to other companies. So as part of the last 2 years, we basically expose these. We have a day by which they, in fact, set up their wares in our Herald Square store, and other companies come in, and they just had this opportunity to really talk about what they're about and what their goods are. And what we've seen is that other companies are picking up their content.
Well, that's great to hear. Fantastic. Well, thank you for that. So another question for you. You touched on gender diversity primarily, but you also did touch on ethnic diversity. And I'm just curious if you could tell us a bit more about the programs and initiatives you have in place to support that specific goal.
So what right now is, like, when we look at, we had, when we were part of the Me Too movement, and actually it was really Can We Talk, so it was right after Ferguson, and we had a real issue where we were, in the company, we were pretty silent about it. And there was a lot of discomfort, particularly from our African-American colleagues, that we were not standing up for setting up a community by which all of that passion could be discussed and vetted in the workplace. And there was a whole need for people to be able to bring their authentic selves to work. So we basically worked with Dr. Benjamin Gates, and he really he said something to me that was very powerful, that really has kind of shaped the way that I think about the difference between diversity and inclusion. And the idea about having the census, to have diverse executives in your fold is one thing, and they can be in the stands, but to have them on the playing field, actually, competing and actually working and shaping strategy for the company, that's got to be your goal. And if you don't have that, and the litmus test of that is how many of them are in every rank of your management. And so whatever you're doing it wrong if you don't have symmetry in that population. And so that got us thinking about what we were doing wrong. Why were we losing these high caliber ethnic executives that were not part of the slate that we had the opportunity to tap into for senior executive ranks? So to answer your question, in 2019, we're now looking at our highest potential minority executives that are going to be part of our Leadership Institute, where versus bringing them as a part of a broader group, they're going to come in together. And so their particular, whatever their needs are going to be shaped, that are going to then be brought to the rest of the company in terms of what strategies that we have to deploy. To be able to start a community in the same way that an ERG has been a community for like interest, this is going to be an opportunity for us to watch what we can do with these particular executives and have a better success rate of taking them to the next level of management. So I hope that I have a better story on this a year from now when we talk about it.
Perfect. I'll look forward to our talking about that in a year. Hopefully we will be able to do that. But no, that makes a lot of sense. And I think what you just said as well, I'm sure many people in the room would agree, is that challenge is always finding that balance between diversity and inclusion, right? Because you can bring in a whole bunch of diverse candidates, but if the culture doesn't support it, it's not going to work, right? So it's interesting to hear you talk about that. I appreciate it. So we were talking a bit at lunch, and I've heard other conversations about this through the course of the afternoon and meetings leading up to the event about board composition. You have a particularly diverse board, half women, right? 1/3 ethnicity in terms of the board composition. So how important is that to you? And do you plan on building out on that strategy going forward?
So really important and very committed to doing it. It's in the same way that you think about what you do with senior executives is the same way that you're picking your boards. And I'm a new chairman, so this is a new role for me, but we're looking for and in some cases you have very extensive slates. So currently I've got a tech position that I'm looking to fill on my board, and it is amazing the amount of candidates that you have. And then there was another search that we were looking for where it was a sitting CEO, less diversity there, less available choices, either women or ethnicity. So this was it depends on what it is, but when I strongly believe that your board has got to reflect the communities that you serve. And so what I find is that it's as important for me to have somebody that looks like those communities as someone who is able to then come into that board room and be able to influence other board members. So I'm looking as much for their personality and how well they lean in and how well they're able to, push around in some cases, some board members that are more settled in their points of view and they're more tenured in their experience. So for us, in looking at a board, as we kind of talked about at lunch with Maria, we were talking about part of it is really generational. And I'm looking, it's as much about gender and ethnicity as it is about generation. And so I'm looking for younger board members. When you look at the age of my board, I've got the opportunity to bring in people that have newer lenses that are really thinking about the millennial and the Gen Z customer in a fresher way than some of my existing board members.
Fantastic. It's interesting. I don't know if anybody here has seen the study that Deloitte did about a year or so ago about the importance of board diversity. And they conducted a survey of about 300 executives around the globe, and it was clear that they were focusing on the importance of board diversity, linking it back to the business strategy, and also to your point a moment ago, not just about race and gender, but also the broader perspective in terms of age and other aspects of diversity. So that's an interesting. I see a lot of people nodding, but if you haven't read it, it's worth looking up. It's a very interesting study, actually. So one more question before we open it up to the audience, if you don't mind my asking this. How clearly you've had great success in this space, and you are clearly very well versed in diversity and inclusion, which is just phenomenal to see. It's amazing. It's very, very impressive. So congratulations to the whole Macy's team. How would you define success in the next 3 to 5 years as it relates to diversity and inclusion at Macy's?
So I would go back to the workforce piece, and I would say that if we've got the success in the upper management ranks that I would have a vision that we could, that would be successful. So it's going to come down to highly successful, diverse executives thriving that are making the key decisions in where the company is going. And we've got a lot of work to do to get there, but I'm committed to it.
That's fantastic. That's great. Well, thank you so much, Jeff. This is a real pleasure to be up here with you. Absolutely. So I think we're going to open up the floor to questions for a couple minutes. Do we have any? Yep, right there.
Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts. I am from PepsiCo, the head of diversity and engagement. What we observe, at least in our industry, we have a lot of females in the functions. Unfortunately, we don't see as many females in the business leadership, profit, and loss management roles. I was wondering, maybe in the retail industry, it's a different story, but how do we encourage especially our female talent for such roles? I think that's the question.
I think this is still an issue at Macy's too. It was interesting in Women in Need, or Women at Macy's, which is our WAM ERG. One thing that I think that we just check the box on fully is that women feel very safe and they can be themselves when they're at Macy's. We don't have any level of sexual harassment. We have very limited sexual harassment. You might see some of that in our stores organization, but not in our corporate environment. But women will claim that they have the same issues that I think all women do that are executives, that they feel like they have to be totally buttoned down on every single point of view before they'll ask for something, before they'll jump in. And some males will do so with less preparedness. And so there's still that, they talk about that as a community, they worry about that as a community. But in general, what you see is you have a lot of very high-powered women that work at Macy's that are amazing role models to women who are coming up. And so I think the more you can have them in the C-suite, and we have many in the C-suite, we recruit them into the C-suite if we haven't developed them there, that have no issue of fully expressing their point of view, that are driving strategy at the highest levels, that are making all the changes that we must make as an industry. And I see that I think retail is blessed with having more gender, equality than many other industries. You just see some of the top women in our industry are the change agents that are defining where retail is going. And I see that at Macy's too. But I still think that there is, when I listen to the Women in Need, we actually had our senior women, and Cheryl will chuckle about this, I was saying, because a woman was saying, I still feel different. I still feel like I have to be, over-prepared when I go into something. And this guy who isn't, just what I described. And I said to our group, I said, is that true? Is that really who we are? And a couple of the women basically said, yeah, there's guys in this room that mansplain. There are guys in this room that still, treat women differently than they treat each other. So I think that cuts across our company, but I think as our industry and mostly in our company, we've got really strong women, and those role models are everything you need in order for women who are coming in to see where they could potentially go.
Excellent. We have another question right here.
Hi, my name is Carolina Janicelli. I'm with JP Morgan. More and more, we are now expecting leaders of big companies like Macy's, my own company, to take a stand for political and social issues affecting our communities. Obviously, you cover the whole country as your client base. You don't want to alienate a certain customer base based on their political beliefs. How do you navigate that? How do you decide when to make a stand when it comes to a controversial issue?
So I've got scars on this issue. You have to take a stand on it. And we have been, because we do serve America, and when you look at our business and you look at it by zip code, we are really just the polarization of where America is right now. That's my customer base, and when you're servicing 1 out of 2, you're going to have that. So you can get paralyzed by that, and you can just say, I can't take a stand because I'm going to be upsetting this half to or you can say, these are our core values and we're going to stand behind them. And what does that look like? And really talk through all the things that could potentially come up and then how you're going to operate authentically. But you have to build up almost that muscle memory so that you're ready when something comes up and you're ready to respond. And the scar I would talk about would be, we did the right thing by taking Donald Trump product out of our stores. So when he announced his candidacy, and that was my decision to do that. I would have handled it differently in looking what happened. This was in June, right after he announced his candidacy, and we made the call that following Tuesday. And much of it was because we had our Lavos ERG group that came to us and said, how can you stand against a man that is, you know what he said about populations coming across the border, and so we made the decision very quickly on it. And what happened was, because we had a relationship with Donald Trump and because we had been selling his products for some time, and my predecessor had a personal relationship with him, we could have handled it differently and hit the exact same outcome. And so what ended up happening was, it was amazing when you saw the backlash that we got on that. We had about 1 positive to 99 negatives that came up. You know, we had, and we were pushing into our Latina partners to basically say, stand up with us on this. And they weren't as organized as we would have liked them to be at that particular time. And so we got dragged into the press. We got lots of ripped up credit cards. You could see pockets of the country where our business was affected. I stand by the decision. I would have handled it in a way differently in the future. Would we have engaged Trump differently in order to have come to a decision on this thing, taken another week to do it? But we would have done the same outcome. So, you know, we deal with this all the time. We've dealt with it on a lot of pride issues, and, you know, we're going to stand up more firmly on that. And I think that in my leadership, I know that there are the points that you must stand up for. You're not going to, you know, deviate from that, and I'm committing to that to my company. So it's gonna be uncomfortable, but we're doing it.
Great question and excellent answer. That's incredible, amazing. Oh wow, we've got lots of questions. How about right there?
Just so you know, I'm wearing a Macy's online suit and shoes.
Thank you.
And I want to thank you for your supporting diversity, seeing it as a good business and also apparently morally. Having said that, and my son just bought 3 winter coats at Macy's the other day. That's the nice part. Here's the not so nice part. So I have stopped buying Macy's online because I saw an article a couple of years ago about Chinese customers going to Macy's at Herald Square and being denied business because they were purchasing. I was told by one of your employees, because some Chinese middle persons would come in and buy lots of stuff. So they started stopping selling to anybody Chinese who looked like they weren't wealthy and were buying lots of things. And when I read that, I stopped buying online. This was the last thing I bought 2 years ago. Oh, sorry to hear that. Yeah, but I'm not done. And my son bought more than I would ever buy anyway. So he's 14 and went with my wife. So anyway, my question is, number one, do you know about this, and what was the reasoning behind it? Why can't you sell, even if they are middle persons, to them anyway? And number two, why is it, if you've changed the policy, and I'm assuming you probably have, why is it I have not heard about it? Why is it that your PR and your communication has not put out so that I would read that, oh, Macy's took care of this, they believe in diversity, and I should go back to going online because I do miss buying your stuff online?
Okay, well, I hope to win you back. First off, that's not exactly what happened. So what happened was that in the cosmetics business, there is a big diversion market that goes on. So when you think about the prices that we sell our products at can be resold, particularly in our European countries, as well as the Pacific Rim countries, for significantly more retail. So you've got some brands like Chanel that basically mandates that if you sell more than 3 pieces of a particular item to they'll stop selling that. They don't want any diverting product. We generally apply those guidelines to ourselves. So when we work with the Estee Lauder Group, which is what this happened in our Herald Square store, and there were a couple of our colleagues there that were selling knowingly many units to a diverter that was then making profits on those products, selling them back into other countries. And so those particular associates were disciplined. We call them colleagues. They were disciplined. And that ended up being an issue that got blown out of proportion and, frankly, not reported correctly in the press. And so we stand by that. When you think about a customer who's coming in, and if it's an advanced night repair, which would be a $45 bottle that can be sold for $200 in another country, and somebody is coming in and they're buying 20 of those, they're not buying those for personal consumption. And so anytime you hit those triggers, we would have, where we can't sell you more than X on this particular day. And we do that for all customers, not Chinese customers or Arabic customers or Caucasian customers. We do that for all customers. And if we've got an associate that is knowingly going against that policy and doing that with certain customers, knowing that they're breaking that policy, we would take action on that. Now, to the second part of your question about should we have, could we have gotten the news out there about what our policy is and exactly how we administer it and why that is different from what was being reported in terms of a profiling case? I think based on the fact that you don't know differently about it, we should have done a better job. And I've got Cheryl Hainanen, who is at table there, who's in charge of communications, and I want her to take that point.
Okay, so
I appreciate that.
There we go. That's great, actually. So we have time for one more question. And I see this gentleman's had his hand up for a bit.
Hi, great comments, really enjoyed it. Just a thought regarding how you can blend D&I activity with business results. One of the things you mentioned was in covering the whole country, you have pockets where you disproportionately sell to different groups.
Yes.
You have the ERGs that have a different propensity to know about different groups.
Yes.
Have you blended those together to say, in certain areas, we should have our stores reflect different assortments because of the customer base? I've lived in a number of areas. I haven't quite seen that in Macy's, but I was wondering if you've taken advantage of all that talent and the opportunity to grow your business.
So we were on this actually fairly early with what we call our My Macy's initiatives, where we actually had, it was really before the advent of really predictive analytics on this, where we had what we called them district planners that did nothing but that. And they were working with us to expand the assortment, whatever the needs were at a door level. And so we made a lot of hay on that in like 2010 through about 2015. The business got really tough for us, and we started to eliminate those players. And so I think what you're describing is we now believe we can do that through data analysis, and we can really see, and because we've got such a broader menu of content that's online, we can add so much content online because of what we do with our vendor direct programs, and whatever those communities need and sell, we've got the menu to be able to distort it and put it at a door level. So we have huge ambition to be incredibly localized in every one of our doors. And it's a big difference. I mean, you can have a door that's 5 miles apart from another door that has very different assortment needs. There's going to be common core content, but the opportunity to localize is huge. So I take your point that we need to do a better job of it, but it's definitely a strategy and an ambition of ours. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much for all these phenomenal questions. Before we close out the session, if Jeff doesn't mind, I would like to ask you, to this audience of leaders, practitioners, and consumers, if you have one piece of advice that you'd like to take away, or they should take away.
I just think that we are all in this together, and our opportunity to have a group of executives that represent America, get them ready, because I think all business leaders are looking for opportunities to make our populations reflect the communities that we serve, and we want to make sure that those executives are ready. We have a part as business. We have parts in kind of advocacy groups to make sure that we're tapping into those populations and pointing them towards. I mean, I look at the retail business, and James and I are on the NRF Foundation, and one of our big opportunities is scholarship programs and the Rise Up programs, and getting executives with barriers more excited about the retail business, because we see nothing but opportunity there. And I think the more our populations reflect our communities, the healthier our business is going to be. And I would, whatever your part is to help us do that, I would encourage you to.
That's excellent. Thank you. Very much appreciate it, Jeff. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you.